in the tutoring appointment that I just had, I stopped at the humoral line of defense. And so the first video that I'm going to do is going to make sure that I go over the cell-mediated stuff. And then maybe if I have time later, I'll make another video for humoral. But I just want to stop where I left off. So first, I kind of rushed through this at the beginning, but I want to talk about some of the major terms that we're going to be using when we talk about cell-mediated going into humoral of the third line of defense. And for that, I don't have a ton of board space, so I'm just going to write some of the things on this board, and I'll bring it up when it becomes important. Okay, so the first thing that we talked about were T cells. Remember, T cells are in the cell-mediated line of the third line of defense. So cell-mediated and we have two different kinds of T cells. We have helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells. Helper T cells, from now on, I'm going to write T sub H. In cytotoxic T cells, I'm going to write T sub C. Both helper and cytotoxic T cells are both kinds of T cells, so they're both considered to be in the cell-mediated line of the cell-mediated branch of the third line of defense. T cells are also in the third line of defense, like I said, so they're considered to be lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are leukocytes, or white blood cells, that have memory. So helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells are in the third line of defense, more specifically the cell-mediated branch of the third line of defense, and they both have something called CD receptors. CD receptors are receptors only found on T cells. Even more specific, CD4 is always found on helper T cells. CD8, sorry, hope you can read that, CD8 is only found on cytotoxic T cells. So if you are talking about a cell that has a CD4 receptor, you know you're talking about a helper T cell. If you have a cell that has a CD8 receptor, you know you're talking about a cytotoxic T cell. Helper T cells, just to be blunt about it, they kill. They kill infected cells. Helper T cells don't kill. They don't, sorry, I'm still super flustered from today. Helper T cells help. And we're going to give a specific example of that. So helper T cells help. Cytotoxic T cells are the cells that kill. And we're going to talk about those more as we go throughout this third line of defense. Two other terms that we need to know. We have different things called MHCs. There are two kinds of MHCs. There's MHC class 1 and there's MHC class 2. MHC class 1 can be done by any cell. Don't think, oh, it can only be done by skin cells, or only be done by cells in my liver, or only done by cells in my, my kidneys. This can include actually cells that are in your immune system as well. For example, macrophages can get infected. And remember I said any cell can do MHC class 1 as long as the cell is infected. So just like cells in my finger and kidneys and lungs and such, they can get infected, so can the cells in my immune system. For example, macrophages are infected by tuberculosis. Helper T cells are infected by HIV. B cells are infected by the Epstein-Barr virus, which is for mononucleosis. So any cell in the entire body can be infected. So any cell in the entire body can do MHC class 1. MHC class 2 is more specialized. It's done by only B cells and phagocytes. Now remember, we learned about 3 different cells that are phagocytes. We have the neutrophils, macrophages, and dendritic cells. So to be more specific, we could say that MHC class 2 is done by B cells, macrophages, dendritic cells, and neutrophils. All of those cells are phagocytes, so they can all do MHC class 2. But remember, this is important, B cells can do MHC class 2 as well. MHC class 2 is not saying it's infected, While they're MHC class 2, remember these phagocytes are in the second line of defense. So when they eat something, they just know that they ate something that's foreign to the body. They know that they ate something that's antigenic. They don't know if they ate something super bad or not. So what they'll do is they'll phagocytize something. They'll eat something, take a part of it, and present it on an MHC class 2. They just ate something. They weren't infected by anything. So when they eat something, they present it on their MHC class 2. That's their way of saying, hey, T cells, come and look at what I ate and tell me if it's bad or not. Because remember, the phagocytes are in the second line of defense, but the T cells that come in response to the MHC class 2 found on the phagocytes are in the third line of defense. So all in all, MHC class 2 is just saying, hey, come look what I ate for lunch. MHC class 1 is, hey, I'm infected, come kill me. So if you think about this, at CD, one of these CDs is always going to attach to an MHC. So in this case, you never have two CDs attached to each other. You never have two MHCs attached to each other. You always have one CD attached to an MHC. Now if you're a cell and you do MHC class 2, what are you wanting? Again, you want someone to tell you if you ate something bad or not. So in response to MHC class 2, you look at our two possibilities of what can come. Do you want a helper or a cytotoxic T cell to come? Remember, you're like, just see what I ate for lunch. You don't want something to come kill you, right? So CD8 never attaches to MHC class 2. When a cell presents MHC class 2, he's saying, come help me, just come look at what I ate. So CD4 receptors found on helper T cells always come in response to MHC class 2. The opposite of that is when a cell does MHC class 1. That means he's infected. MHC class 1 always attaches to CD8. So the moral of the story here is MHC class 2, which can be done by B cells and phagocytes, always attaches to CD4 found on helper T cells. Always. MHC class 1, which can be done by any cell as long as it's infected, always, always, always attaches to CD8 found on cytotoxic T cells. If you think about it, if phagocytes did MHC class 1, then they would be killed. If a phagocyte is infected, that's what they want. But for the most part, phagocytes just eat things, and they don't want to be killed, they just want help. So they'll do MHC class 2 and have a helper T cell come. If this doesn't make sense yet, I'm about to draw out a picture that will help emphasize this. So I'll put that down for now. The thing I want us to remember throughout this whole thing, this is the way I remembered it when I took the class. You have 1, 2, 4, 8. 1 always attaches to 8, 2 always attaches to 4. Remember, these are our two MHCs, these are our two CDs. So CD4 is on a helper T cell, attaches to MHC class 2 on a phagocyte or a B cell. CD8 is on a cytotoxic T cell, attaches to MHC class 1 on any cell as long as it's infected. Alright, so now let's get into the picture. The scenario that I'm going to do first is going to start with a phagocyte. So in this phagocyte right here, we're saying he's a phagocyte, so he could be a macrophage, dendritic cell, or a neutrophil. It doesn't matter what he is, he's just a phagocyte. And remember, what do phagocytes do? They eat stuff. So in this case, we're going to say he eats a bacteria. Remember, you need to know the whole process of phagocytosis. So we have engulfment, well, adhesion, engulfment, fusion, destruction. And when he destroys what he eats, he's going to take a piece of what he eats, and he's going to display it on his surface. Okay? Now, is the macrophage infected? No, we just said the macrophage ate something. So in this case, the macrophage ate something, so he's going to do MHC class 2. Does that work? Yes. It works because, 1, he's a phagocyte. Can phagocytes do MHC class 2? Yes. Check. 2, what does MHC class 2 mean? It means that he says, come look at what I ate for lunch today. Is that what he's asking? Yes. So this phagocyte is going to do MHC class 2. He takes a piece of what he eats, and he displays it on his surface.